Ho had spent 40 years studying things that nobody cared about. He worked in the lowest level of the Great Archive, where dust covered everything and the lights flickered because nobody bothered to fix them. The other scholars called him the keeper of useless things. They laughed at him during meetings. They ignored his research papers. They thought he was wasting his life. But Ho did not care what they thought. He knew something that they did not know. He knew that the old stories were not just stories. The people had ruled this part of the galaxy for 3,000 years. They were tall and proud, with silver skin and 4 arms. They had conquered dozens of worlds. They had built an empire that stretched across 500 star systems. They believed they were the greatest civilization that had ever existed. And maybe they were right, but Ho had found something in the old texts that made him wonder. The text spoke of another species, a species from a small blue world on the edge of the galaxy. The texts called them the Earthborn, or sometimes just humans. According to the ancient writings, these humans had existed long before they learned to build fires. They had traveled between stars when they were still living in caves. Most scholars said these texts were myths, fairy tales, stories that Primitive had invented to explain things they did not understand. But Ho had found too many of these texts, too many different sources from too many different time periods, all describing the same things, the same species, the same blue world, the same impossible technologies. He sat at his desk now, surrounded by stacks of old books and glowing data tablets. The air smelled like old paper and forgotten memories. A single lamp cast yellow light over his work. In front of him was a metal box. He had found it 3 days ago, buried deep in a storage room that had not been opened in 500 years. The box was not made of any metal that scientists could identify. It was covered with strange symbols that matched the descriptions in the oldest texts. Ho took a deep breath. His 4 hands were shaking slightly. He had spent his entire life searching for proof, real, physical proof that the Earthborn had existed, and now he held that proof in his hands. He opened the box. Inside was a small device. It looked like a flat rectangle made of black glass. There were no buttons, no switches, no obvious way to turn it on. Ho picked it up carefully. It was lighter than he expected. The moment he touched it, the device lit up. Ho almost dropped it in surprise. A blue light spread across the surface of the device. Strange symbols appeared, symbols that looked nothing like writing. Then the symbols changed, shifting and rearranging themselves until Ho could read them. The device had translated itself into his language. His heart beat faster. This was technology that should not exist. Technology that was thousands of years more advanced than anything they had ever built. And it had been sitting in a forgotten storage room for 5 centuries. The screen showed a simple message: "Greetings, friend. This device contains a gift from Earth. When you are ready, we will return." Ho stared at the words for a long time. His mind raced with questions. Who had left this device? When had they left it? What did they mean by "when you are ready"? He needed to show this to the council. They needed to see this. They needed to understand that the old stories were true. The next morning, Ho stood before the High Council of. The council chamber was a massive room with walls made of white stone. 12 council members sat on raised platforms, looking down at Ho like he was an insect. They wore expensive robes decorated with jewels. Their silver skin glowed under the bright lights. High Counselor Bora sat in the center, her expression cold and bored. She was the most powerful person in the empire. She had held her position for 60 years, and she did not like having her time wasted. "You requested an emergency meeting," Bora said. Her voice echoed through the chamber. "This had better be important, keeper of useless things." Some of the other council members laughed quietly. Ho ignored them. He held up the black device. "I found this in the archive. It is proof that the Earthborn existed. It is proof that humans are real." The laughter stopped. The council members exchanged confused looks. "Humans?" said Counselor, an older male with a scar across his face. "You mean the creatures from the children's stories, the two-armed monsters who eat planets?" "They were not monsters," Ho said. "The stories about them eating planets are exaggerations, later additions. The original texts describe them as peaceful explorers, scientists and philosophers. They visited our world thousands of years ago when our ancestors were still primitive." "Nonsense," Bora said. "There is no such thing as humans. They are myths, legends invented by superstitious fools." "Then explain this device," Ho said. He pressed a button on the side of the rectangle. The device projected a hologram into the air above him. The hologram showed a planet, a small blue planet covered with water and green land. White clouds swirled across its surface. It was beautiful in a way that Ho had never seen before. "This is Earth," he said. "The human, the device contains thousands of images, history, science, art, music, everything that proves humans existed and visited our ancestors." The council members stared at the hologram. Their expressions changed from boredom to confusion to something that looked almost like fear. "Where did you find this?" Bora demanded. "In storage room 774. It had been sealed for 500 years. No could have created this technology. No could have forged these records. This is real." Bora stood up from her platform. She walked down the steps until she was standing in front of Ho. She took the device from his hands and examined it closely. "Even if this is real," she said slowly, "it does not matter. These humans, if they existed, are clearly gone now. They have not been seen in thousands of years. They are extinct, dead, forgotten. Why should we care about a species that no longer exists?" "The device says they will return," Ho said. "It says they are waiting." "Waiting for what?" "I do not know. But if they are still out there, if they are as advanced as these records suggest, we need to prepare. We need to understand who they are and what they want." Bora laughed. It was not a kind laugh. "You want us to prepare for ghosts, for fairy tales. The Empire has real enemies to worry about. We do not have time for your fantasies." She threw the device back to Ho. He caught it with his lower hands. "Go back to your basement," Bora said. "Play with your old books, but do not waste the council's time again with stories about mythical creatures." She turned and walked back to her platform. The other council members followed her lead, returning to their seats and their conversations. The meeting was over. Ho stood alone in the center of the chamber, holding the device that could change everything. But nobody cared. Nobody believed him. He was still just the keeper of useless things. He was about to leave when something happened. The lights in the chamber flickered. Then they went out completely. Emergency lights came on, casting red shadows across the white walls. An alarm started beeping somewhere in the distance. "What is happening?" Bora demanded. A young officer ran into the chamber. He was breathing hard and his silver skin had turned pale. "High Counselor, our deep space sensors have detected something. Ships, unknown ships. They are entering our territory from the outer rim." "How many ships?" Counselor asked. The officer swallowed nervously. "We do not know, sir. Our sensors cannot count them all. There are thousands of them, maybe more." The room went silent. The council members looked at each other with wide eyes. "What kind of ships?" Bora asked. Her voice was quiet now, almost a whisper. "Unknown design," the officer said. "They do not match any species in our database. They are not from any of our enemies. They are something else." Ho felt a strange sensation in his chest. It was not fear. It was something closer to excitement. He looked down at the device in his hands. The screen was glowing brighter than before. "The council needs to see the sensor data," the officer continued. "The ships, they are broadcasting a message, a repeating signal in all known languages." "What does it say?" Bora demanded. The officer looked at her with an expression that Ho could not read. It might have been fear. It might have been wonder. "It says we are humanity. We have been watching. We have been waiting. Now we have returned." The council chamber erupted in chaos. Council members shouted questions and demands. Officers ran in and out, carrying reports and data tablets. The alarm continued to beep, louder and faster. But Ho stood perfectly still. He looked at the device in his hands, at the image of the blue planet called Earth. The message on the screen had changed. It now showed only 2 words. "Hello again." Ho smiled. He had spent 40 years being laughed at, 40 years being called a fool for believing in the old stories. But now the stories had come to life. The legends had arrived. The humans were real and they were here. He did not know what would happen next. He did not know if humanity came as friends or enemies. He did not know why they had waited so long or what they wanted from the Empire. But he knew one thing for certain. The universe had just changed forever, and nothing would ever be the same again. Outside, beyond the atmosphere beyond the defensive stations and the patrol ships, the human fleet continued its approach. Thousands of vessels moved in perfect formation. They were enormous, each one larger than the biggest warship. They moved without making a sound, their engines producing no heat signatures, their hulls reflecting no light. They were beautiful and terrible. They were ancient and new. They were everything the old stories had described and more. And they were only the beginning. In the command center of the lead ship, a human woman stood before a wall of screens showing the response. Fighters were launching. Defense platforms were powering up. Panicked communications were flying in all directions. Captain watched it all with calm eyes. She had waited a long time for this moment. Her people had waited even longer. "They are scared," said her first officer, a tall man named Dongwu. "Should we send another message?" Shook her head. "Not yet. Let them process what they are seeing. Let them remember the old stories. Then when they are ready to listen, we will speak." "And if they attack first?" Smiled. It was a gentle smile, full of patience and old wisdom. "Then we will show them why the legends called us unkillable." She turned back to the screens. Below her, the world sparkled like a silver jewel. Somewhere on that world, she knew, there was a scholar holding a device that her ancestors had left thousands of years ago. A gift and a promise, waiting to be fulfilled. "Open all channels," said. "Let them hear us. Let them know that we remember who we are, even if they forgot." Her voice went out across the stars, reaching every ship and every station and every terrified who was watching the sky. "This is Captain of the Human Exploration Fleet. We mean you no harm. We have come to talk. The question is simple. Will you listen?" The galaxy held its breath and waited for an answer. Captain stood on the bridge of the Dawn's Promise, the flagship of the Human Exploration Fleet. The ship was massive, stretching nearly 5 kilometers from bow to stern. It had been built 300 years ago, designed to travel across galaxies and last for centuries. Was only the 7th captain to command it. She watched the main screen as ships gathered in the distance. There were hundreds of them now, forming defensive lines between the human fleet and there. They looked small compared to human vessels. Their weapons were powered and ready. Their shields were at maximum strength. They were terrified and understood why. For thousands of years they had believed they were alone. They had conquered other species. They had built an empire. They had grown comfortable in their power. And now, without warning, ships from legend had appeared in their sky. "They are bringing more warships," Dongwu reported from his station. "I count 347 combat vessels now. 20 orbital defense platforms are also moving into position." "Let them prepare," said calmly. "They need to feel safe before they can listen." "Captain, with respect, our shields can handle anything they throw at us. We could end this in minutes." Turned to look at her first officer. He was young, only 80 years old. He had grown up hearing stories about the great human expansion, about the old wars and the victories that had made humanity famous. He did not remember why those wars had ended. Ending things quickly is not the same as ending things well, said. We are not here to conquer. We are here to reconnect. They might not give us that choice. Then we will give them time to make a better one. She turned back to the screen. The fleet was moving into an attack formation. Their weapons were charging. Any moment now, they would make a decision that could change everything. In the command center, High Counselor Bora was shouting orders. Her 4 arms waved frantically as she pointed at different screens and demanded answers. How did they get past our outer sensors? How did thousands of ships appear without warning? Where did they come from? Admiral Han Solo stood beside her, studying the tactical display. He was the commander of the military, a veteran of 3 border wars. He had never lost a battle in his life, but what he saw on the display made his silver blood run cold. The human ships are not using any propulsion system we recognize, he said slowly. They appeared at the edge of our system approximately 6 hours ago. They have been moving at a steady speed since then, making no attempt to hide. Can we destroy them? Han Solo hesitated. I do not know. Their ships are larger than anything in our fleet. Our scans cannot penetrate their hulls. We have no idea what weapons they carry or how strong their defenses are. Then we attack now, before they get any closer. High Counselor, perhaps we should wait. They say they want to talk. Bora spun around to face him. Her eyes were wild with fear and anger. They invaded our territory without permission. They appeared from nowhere. They claim to be from a species that does not exist. We cannot trust anything they say. But if they wanted to destroy us, why would they announce themselves? Why would they move so slowly? Why would they send peaceful messages? Because they are playing with us. Because they want us to be afraid. Because... She stopped speaking. Every screen in the command center had changed. The tactical displays, the communication monitors, the sensor readouts, all of them now showed the same image, a human face. It was a woman with dark hair and dark eyes. She looked young, but there was something ancient in her expression. She smiled gently at the camera. Hello, she said. Her voice was soft and clear. My name is... I am the captain of the human fleet. I apologize for the interruption, but I wanted to speak to you directly. Bora stared at the screen. How are you doing this? This is a secure military system. I know, said. We built the technology that your systems are based on. Your ancestors received it from us thousands of years ago. We simply used the old access codes. That is impossible. Many things seem impossible until they happen. Please, I am not here to threaten you. I am here to explain. Admiral Han Solo stepped forward. Explain what? Who are you? Why have you come? Nodded at him respectfully. We are humans. We are from a planet called Earth in a distant part of the galaxy. Long ago, when your species was young, our explorers visited your world. We shared some of our technology. We helped your civilization grow. Then we left because you were not ready for the full truth. Not ready, Bora said. Not ready for what? Not ready to join the larger community of life in the universe. You were still learning, still growing. We decided to watch from a distance and wait for the right time. Wait for 3,000 years. Smiled sadly. Time moves differently when you have watched civilizations rise and fall. We have been patient. But now we believe you are ready, so we have returned. Han Solo exchanged a look with Bora. Neither of them knew what to say. This was beyond anything they had prepared for. This was not an invasion or an attack. It was something else entirely. What do you want from us? Han Solo asked. Friendship, said simply. Partnership. We want to share what we know. We want to learn what you have discovered. We want to work together to build something greater than either of us could build alone. Bora laughed. It was a harsh, bitter sound. You expect us to believe that. You appear without warning with a fleet that could destroy us, and you claim you only want friendship." "Yes," said. "I know it is hard to believe. I know you are afraid, but fear is not a reason to fight. Fear is a reason to ask questions, to learn, to understand. We do not need your philosophy. We need you to leave our territory immediately. If you do not, we will attack." There was a long pause. Its expression did not change. She did not look angry or offended. She looked sad. "I understand your fear," she said. "I will not force you to listen, but I will ask you to consider something. If we wanted to harm you, we would not have announced ourselves. We would not have moved slowly through your system. We would not be speaking to you now. We came openly because we have nothing to hide. We came peacefully because peace is what we seek." "Pretty words," Bora said, "but words mean nothing without proof." "Then let me give you proof." The screens changed again. Now they showed a view of space, the area between the human fleet and the defensive line. Something was happening. One of the human ships was moving forward, separating from the main fleet. It was not the flagship. It was a smaller vessel, barely larger than a cruiser. It moved slowly, its weapons clearly powered down, its shields lowered. "This is my personal shuttle," his voice continued. "I am coming to your world alone and unarmed. If you want proof of our intentions, you can have it. I am putting my life in your hands." Bora and Hansol stared at the screen in disbelief. "This is a trick," Bora said. "It has to be." "Our sensors detect only one life form on that shuttle," an officer reported. "One human female, no weapons, no shields. She is completely defenseless." Hansol shook his head slowly. "No commander would do this. No captain would leave their fleet and surrender themselves to an enemy." "Unless they are not our enemy," Ho's voice came from the doorway. Everyone turned. The old scholar stood there, still holding the ancient device he had shown the council. His 4 arms hung at his sides and his silver skin was pale with exhaustion, but his eyes were bright with understanding. "The old texts describe this," he said. "The humans would prove their peaceful intentions by making themselves vulnerable. They believed that trust had to be given before it could be received." "That is foolish," Bora said. "Perhaps, or perhaps it is wisdom that we have forgotten." On the screen, shuttle continued its approach. It passed through the gap between the fleets. It came closer and closer to the defensive line. Every weapon on every ship was pointed at it. One order from Bora and the shuttle would be destroyed. One word and the human captain would die. Bora raised her hand, her mouth open to give the command. But she hesitated. She thought about what it said, about trust, about fear, about the choice between fighting and listening. She thought about the size of the human fleet behind that tiny shuttle. If the humans wanted war, destroying their captain would give them the perfect excuse. The Empire would face an enemy that might be impossible to defeat. But if the humans wanted peace— "Lower weapons," Bora said quietly. "High Counselor," Hansol asked. "I said lower weapons. Let the shuttle pass." Hansol nodded slowly. "You heard the High Counselor. All ships stand down. Let the human vessel through." The order went out across the fleet. Slowly, reluctantly, the ships powered down their weapons. They opened a path through their defensive line. Shuttle flew through without hesitation. It continued toward the small and alone against the vastness of space. On the command center screen's face appeared again. She was smiling. "Thank you," she said. "You have taken the first step. Now let us take the next one together." 1 hour later, shuttle landed at the main spaceport of the capital. Thousands of soldiers surrounded the landing pad. Media drones filled the sky, broadcasting the event to every corner of the Empire. The shuttle door opened. Stepped out. She was smaller than they had expected. She stood barely half the height of an average adult. She had only 2 arms instead of 4. Her skin was brown instead of silver. Her hair was black, pulled back into a simple braid. She wore a plain uniform with no decorations, no medals, no symbols of rank except a small patch on her shoulder showing a blue planet. She looked ordinary, simple, weak. But when she walked down the ramp toward the waiting council members, something strange happened. The soldiers closest to her stepped back without meaning to. The officers who had been ready to arrest her found themselves unable to move. There was something in her eyes, something old and deep and patient, something that remembered more than any could imagine. Bora stood at the front of the welcoming party, if it could be called that. Armed guards surrounded her. Drone weapons hovered overhead. Every precaution had been taken. Walked up to the High Counselor and stopped. They looked at each other for a long moment. Then did something unexpected. She bowed. "Thank you for receiving me," she said. "I know this was not easy. I know you have many questions. I will answer all of them." Bora stared at her. "You are either very brave or very foolish." "Perhaps both," said. "My people believe that there is no path to peace without risk, so here I am taking that risk. We could kill you right now." "Yes, but you will not." "How can you be so sure?" Looked up at the sky. Somewhere above them, beyond the clouds and the atmosphere, the human fleet waited in silence. "Because you invited me here," she said. "Because you lowered your weapons. Because somewhere inside you want to believe that the universe can be better than endless war and conquest. You want to believe that trust is possible." She looked back at Bora. "I am here to show you that it is." Bora did not know how to respond. This was not how first contact was supposed to work. There should be threats and demands. There should be negotiation for resources and territory. There should be power plays and political games. But the human woman stood before her with nothing but honesty in her eyes. No tricks, no hidden agenda, just an offer of friendship from a species that should not exist. "Come with me," Bora said finally. "We have much to discuss." She turned and walked toward the council building. After a moment, followed. Behind them, Ho watched from the crowd. He was smiling for the first time in 40 years. The legends had come to life, and everything was about to change. Commander stood on the bridge of his warship, the Iron Fist, and watched the human fleet with hate in his eyes. He was the most decorated warrior in the military. He had crushed rebellions on a dozen worlds. He had destroyed enemy fleets without mercy. He had never known defeat. And now some alien creature had walked onto soil as if she owned it. "This is wrong," he said to his officers. "The High Counselor has lost her mind. She is welcoming invaders instead of destroying them." His first officer, a younger male named Sung-Ho, shifted uncomfortably. "The Council has ordered us to stand down, Commander. We cannot disobey." "The Council does not understand the threat. These humans claim to be peaceful, but look at their fleet. Thousands of ships, each one larger than our biggest vessels. They could destroy us in hours if they wanted to." "Then perhaps we should be grateful they do not want to." Turned to face Sung-Ho with fury in his eyes. "Grateful? We should be grateful that monsters from legend have decided not to kill us yet. That is cowardice. That is weakness." Sung-Ho looked down at the floor. He did not agree with his commander, but he knew better than to argue. Turned back to the human flagship hung in space like a sleeping giant. It was beautiful in a terrible way, all smooth curves and elegant lines. It made ships look like crude toys built by children. "I will not wait for them to decide our fate," said quietly. "I will act while we still can." He pressed a button on his command console. "All loyal ships, this is Commander. The Council has been fooled by human lies. They have invited our enemy into our home. They are traitors to the people. I am assuming command of the defense fleet. All ships that stand with me, break formation and prepare for attack." Sung-Ho stared at him in horror. "Commander, this is treason. This is survival." For a long moment, nothing happened. His words echoed across the communication channels. Every ship in the fleet heard them. Every captain had to make a choice. Then slowly ships began to move, one at first, then 5, then 20. Soon, nearly 100 warships had left the defensive line and formed up behind the Iron Fist. "Loyal warriors," said, his voice thick with emotion. "Today we strike before the humans can act. Today we destroy the threat while they believe we are weak. Today we prove that bows to no one." He raised his 4 arms in the traditional gesture of battle. "All ships, charge weapons and prepare to attack. Target the human flagship. Fire on my command." In the council chamber on the surface sat across from High Counselor Bora. Between them was a table covered with documents, maps, and data tablets. They had been talking for 3 hours. Ho sat in the corner, listening quietly. He was officially present as an expert on human history, but he knew the real reason he was there. He was the only person in the room who had actually believed in humans before today. "Your proposal is interesting," Bora said slowly. "You offer technology, medical knowledge, access to trade routes across the galaxy, and in return you ask for nothing." "We ask for friendship," said. "We ask for cultural exchange. We want to learn from you as much as we want to teach you." "That makes no sense. No species gives without expecting something in return." Smiled gently. "Perhaps that is why so many species fail. They see relationships as transactions. They measure value in what they can take, but we have learned that the greatest value comes from what we can build together." Bora shook her head. "I do not understand you. Your fleet could conquer our empire in days. Why negotiate when you could simply take what you want?" "Because conquest creates enemies. Enemies create wars. Wars destroy everything. We tried that path once long ago. We learned that power without wisdom is destruction without purpose." Before Bora could respond, alarms began to sound throughout the building. Red lights flashed. Soldiers rushed into the chamber with weapons drawn. "High Counselor," one of them reported, "Commander has gone rogue. He is leading a faction of the defense fleet against the human vessels." Bora stood up so fast that her chair fell backwards. "What? Contact him immediately. Order him to stand down." "He is not responding to commands. His ships are charging weapons." Did not move. Her expression remained calm, almost sad. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small communication device. "Dongwu," she said quietly, "I assume you are aware of the situation." A voice came through the device. "Yes, Captain. Approximately 97 ships are approaching in attack formation. They will be in weapons range in 4 minutes. Raise shields on all vessels. Do not power weapons. Do not target the attacking ships." There was a pause. "Captain, are you certain? They are preparing to fire." "I am certain. We will not strike first. We will not strike at all unless there is no other choice." "Understood. Shields are raised." Bora stared at in disbelief. "You are ordering your fleet to do nothing. They are about to attack you." "Yes." "Why?" Looked up at the leader with ancient eyes. "Because I want to show you what we truly are, not with words but with actions." In space, Commander watched his tactical display with grim satisfaction. The human fleet had raised shields, but they had not powered weapons. They were not moving to intercept his forces. They were just sitting there, waiting. "They are afraid," he said. "They know they cannot win against true warriors." "Commander," Sung Ho said nervously, "our scans show that their shields are unlike anything we have ever seen. The energy readings are impossible. No shield is unbreakable. All ships lock weapons on the lead vessel, fire everything we have." 100 warships unleashed their full power. Plasma beams, missile swarms, energy torpedoes, every weapon fired at once, creating a storm of destruction aimed directly at the human flagship. The attack struck the Dawn's promise. And nothing happened. The shields did not flicker. The hull did not buckle. The ship did not even move. The full force of the attack washed over it like water over stone. Stared at the screen. Impossible, fire again, fire everything. They fired again, and again, and again. Each attack had the same result, nothing. Commander, Sung Ho said, his voice shaking, we have depleted 40% of our weapons reserves. Their shields have not lost any power, not even 1%. Slammed his fists against the console. This cannot be. No technology is this advanced. No species is this powerful. But the evidence was right in front of him. His best weapons, his strongest ships, his most determined warriors, all of them were useless against the human fleet. And still, the humans did not fire back. Why are they not attacking? Sung Ho asked. They could destroy us easily. Why are they just taking our fire? Had no answer. He did not understand. In his experience, power was meant to be used. Enemies were meant to be crushed. There was no logic in restraint when victory was certain. On the Dawn's promise, Dongwu watched the attack continue. His jaw was tight with frustration. Captain, the commander shows no sign of stopping. He is wasting his ammunition, but he is not retreating. His voice came through the communication channel. Keep the shields up. Continue to hold fire. With respect, Captain, our crews are getting restless. They want to respond. I know, but we must show them that we are different. We must prove that our mercy is not weakness. And if they do not stop, then we will find another way. An hour passed. The attack continued. Had ordered his ships to rotate, allowing some to recharge while others fired. He was determined to find a weakness in the human shields. But there was no weakness to find. Finally, ships ran out of ammunition. Their energy reserves were depleted. Their weapons systems were overheated. They had given everything they had. And the human fleet remained untouched. Commander, Sung Ho said quietly, we have nothing left. Stood in the center of his bridge, breathing hard. His silver skin had turned gray with exhaustion. His 4 arms hung limply at his sides. He had failed. All ships, he said finally, his voice hollow, fall back to defensive positions. The rogue fleet limped away from the human vessels. They had fired thousands of shots. They had launched every weapon in their arsenals. They had done nothing. On the council chamber, Bora and the other council members watched the battle in stunned silence. They had seen their most powerful commander throw everything at the human fleet. They had seen it all fail. Ho broke the silence. The old texts described this. They called humans unkillable. They said that human shields were like the skin of stars, impossible to pierce. Bora turned too. The human captain was still sitting calmly in her chair, as if nothing had happened. You let him attack you, Bora said slowly. You could have destroyed him, but you did nothing. Destruction is easy, said. Understanding is hard. Commander was afraid. Fear makes people do terrible things, but fear can also be overcome. He committed treason. He attacked a guest of the council. He should be executed. Perhaps that is your decision to make, but I would ask you to consider something else. What? Leaned forward. Commander is not evil. He is a warrior who does not know how to be anything else. He saw our fleet as a threat because he has never seen a fleet that was not a threat. He attacked because attacking is all he knows. So we should forgive him. I am not saying that. I am saying that punishment alone will not change anything. If you want your people to understand us, you need to help them see a different way of living, a way that does not require conquest and fear. Bora sat back in her chair. She had ruled the empire for 60 years. She had made countless difficult decisions, but nothing had prepared her for this. A species that could have destroyed them, choosing mercy instead. A captain who took an attack without responding. A philosophy that said understanding was more important than victory. It went against everything she had ever known. But maybe that was the point. Dongwu said into her communicator, "Please relay a message to Commander's ship." "What message, Captain?" Paused for a moment, choosing her words carefully. Tell him that I understand his fear. Tell him that there is no shame in protecting his people. Tell him that I hope in time he will see that we are not his enemies. And tell him," she smiled softly, "tell him that I forgive him." There was silence on the channel. Then Dongwu's voice came back, heavy with emotion. "Message sent, Captain." On the Iron Fist, Commander received the message. He read it twice, 3 times. He did not understand. He had attacked them without provocation. He had tried to destroy them. He had called them monsters and enemies. And they forgave him. He sat down heavily in his command chair. For the first time in his long career, he did not know what to do. Sung Ho approached cautiously. "Commander, are you well?" Looked up at his first officer. "I do not understand them. I have studied 1,000 enemies. I have fought in 100 battles, but I have never seen anything like this." "Perhaps," Sung Ho said slowly, "that is because they are not enemies." Did not answer. He just stared at where the human fleet waited in patient silence. The legends had called humans many things: warriors, explorers, conquerors. But the oldest legends, the ones most people had forgotten, called them something else. Merciful. And now was beginning to understand why. 3 days had passed since Commander's failed attack. The Empire was in chaos. News of the human fleet had spread to every world, every station, every corner of space. People did not know whether to celebrate or panic. The High Council had been in continuous session since arrival. They debated, argued, and demanded explanations. Some wanted to surrender immediately. Others wanted to find a way to fight. Most simply wanted to understand what was happening. Through it all, waited patiently. She attended meetings when invited. She answered questions honestly. She never raised her voice or made threats. She was calm and steady like a mountain. Ho spent most of his time following her around, documenting everything. He had been given official status as the Council's expert on human affairs, which meant that, for the first time in his career, people actually listened to him. "You have been watching for thousands of years," Ho said one evening, as they walked through the gardens outside the council building. "Why did you never make contact before now?" Stopped beside a fountain. The water glowed silver under the moonlight. She looked up at the stars. "We almost did many times," she said. 2,000 years ago, your people were on the edge of discovering faster-than-light travel. We thought you might be ready. But then your civilization went to war with itself. Billions died. You set yourselves back 500 years. The Great Collapse," Ho said quietly. "Our history books say it was caused by resource shortages." Resource shortages made it worse, but the real cause was fear. Your people were afraid of change, afraid of losing power, so they fought each other instead of working together. She paused. "We watched it happen. We wanted to help, but we had learned from our own history that interfering too early can make things worse." "Your own history?" Smiled sadly. "Humans were not always wise. Long ago we believed that our way was the only way. We traveled to other worlds and imposed our values on the species we found. We thought we were helping them. We were wrong." Ho listened carefully. This was not in any of the ancient texts. This was new information. "What happened?" he asked. "We caused suffering. We destroyed cultures that we should have protected. We made enemies where we should have made friends." Shook her head. "It took us centuries to understand our mistakes, to learn that true progress comes from within, not from outside, that the best way to help others is to give them the tools they need and then step back. So you have been waiting for us to become ready on our own." "Yes, we left technology with your ancestors, knowledge, stories about what was possible. We hoped that in time you would use those gifts to grow into something beautiful." Ho thought about his 40 years in the archive. The texts, the artifacts, the device that had proven humans existed. "You left more than technology," he said slowly. "You left hope, the stories about humans. They inspired us. Even when people called them myths, they made us believe that something greater was possible. Looked at him with warm eyes. That was always the plan. Stories are more powerful than weapons. Ideas can change the universe in ways that force never can. They stood together in silence for a moment, then turned toward the council building. "Tomorrow, I must speak to your council one final time," she said. "I must tell them the full truth about who we are and why we are here. They will have to make a choice, and that choice will shape the future of your people." "What will you tell them?" Smiled everything. The next morning, the full High Council assembled in the Grand Chamber. All 12 members were present, sitting on their raised platforms. Hundreds of officials and observers filled the viewing galleries. Media drones floated everywhere, broadcasting the event across the empire. High Counselor Bora called the session to order. Her voice echoed through the massive room. "Captain of the Human Exploration Fleet has requested to address the Council directly. Given the extraordinary circumstances, we have agreed. Captain, you may speak." Stood alone in the center of the chamber. She wore the same simple uniform she had worn since arriving. No weapons, no guards, no symbols of power except the small patch showing Earth. "Thank you, High Counselor," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. "I know that my presence here has caused confusion and fear. Today, I want to answer all of your questions. I want to tell you the truth about humanity." She pressed a button on a small device in her hand. A hologram appeared above her, showing a star map of the galaxy. "Humanity has existed for approximately 300,000 years, she began. "We achieved space travel about 50,000 years ago. For most of our history, we struggled with the same problems that all species face: war, disease, inequality, fear of those who were different from us." The hologram changed, showing images of ancient human cities, primitive spacecraft, battles between nations. "We almost destroyed ourselves many times. We came close to extinction at least 4 occasions, but each time we found a way to survive, to learn from our mistakes, to become better." The images shifted again, showing sleek modern cities, vast space stations, humans living on countless different worlds. "Today, humanity spans 12 galaxies. We have populations in the hundreds of trillions. We have solved problems that once seemed impossible: death, disease, poverty, war among ourselves. But we did not achieve this through conquest. We achieved it through cooperation." A council member interrupted. 12 galaxies, that is impossible. No species could spread so far." "We have had 50,000 years to grow," said simply. "And we learned early that fighting each other was foolish. Every war cost us resources that could have been used for expansion. Every conflict created wounds that took generations to heal. So we stopped fighting and started building." "Just like that?" Bora asked. "You simply decided to stop fighting?" "It was not simple at all. It took thousands of years. Millions of lives were lost before we finally understood. But yes, eventually, we chose peace. Not because we were weak, but because we were strong enough to see that peace was the better path." Paused, letting her words sink in. "I tell you this," she continued, "because I want you to understand something important. Humanity is not your enemy. We do not want your territory. We do not want to rule you or conquer you or exploit you. We want to help you become what you are meant to be." "And what is that?" Bora asked. Smiled. "That is for you to decide. Every species has its own path, its own destiny. We can offer guidance, but we cannot choose for you." Another council member spoke up. "If you are so powerful, why did you leave us alone for so long? Why did you let us suffer through wars and famines and disasters when you could have helped?" "Because suffering is part of growth," said gently. "I know that sounds cruel, but think about your own lives. Think about the hardships you have faced. Did you not learn from them? Did they not make you stronger? That does not justify abandoning us." "We did not abandon you. We watched. We protected you from threats you never knew about. There are dangers in the universe that would have destroyed the Empire before it ever reached the stars. We dealt with those dangers quietly, without asking for thanks or recognition. The chamber fell silent. The council members looked at each other with wide eyes. "You protected us," Bora said slowly, "for 3,000 years. Yes, not because you owed us anything, not because we expected repayment, but because we believed in your potential. We saw what your species could become, and we wanted to give you the chance to get there." Ho stood in the viewing gallery, his heart's pounding. He thought about all the catastrophes that had almost happened throughout history. The asteroid that had mysteriously changed course. The plague that had stopped spreading for no apparent reason. The enemy fleet that had vanished without explanation. Humans, it had always been humans. "Why reveal yourselves now?" Bora asked. "After all this time, why choose this moment to appear?" Took a deep breath. "Because you are ready. Your technology has reached the point where you will soon discover faster-than-light communication on your own. When that happens, you will be able to contact other species across the galaxy. You will no longer be isolated." She paused. "But there are dangers out there that you do not know about. Species that would exploit you. Civilizations that would see your weakness as an opportunity. If you go out into the galaxy alone, you might not survive. So you came to warn us." "We came to offer partnership. If you accept, we will share everything we know. We will help you prepare for the challenges ahead. We will stand beside you as equals, not as masters." "And if we refuse?" His expression became sad. "Then we will leave. We will continue to protect you from the shadows as we always have, but we would rather walk with you in the light." High Counselor Bora stood up from her platform. She walked down the steps until she was standing directly in front of. They looked at each other, the ancient alien leader and the young-looking human who was older than the civilization. "You ask us to trust you," Bora said, "but trust is not given, it is earned." "I know, that is why I came here unarmed. That is why I let Commander attack us without responding. That is why I am standing before you now, completely vulnerable. I am trying to earn your trust. And if you are lying, if this is all a trick." Reached out and took Bora's hand. The leader flinched but did not pull away. "Look at me," said softly. "Look into my eyes. Tell me if you see lies there." Bora looked. She stared into those ancient, patient eyes for a long moment. She saw sadness. She saw hope. She saw thousands of years of experience compressed into a gaze that seemed to see straight into her soul. She saw no lies. "I believe you," Bora said quietly. "I do not know why, but I believe you." Smiled. "That is all I ask for now." In the gallery, the observers were murmuring among themselves. Some were crying. Others were laughing with relief. The tension that had gripped the Empire for 3 days was finally beginning to break. Ho wiped tears from his 4 eyes. 40 years he had spent believing in stories that everyone said were false. 40 years of ridicule and dismissal. And now he was watching those stories come to life. The myths were real. The legends had returned. And humanity had brought something with them that they had never expected. Not conquest, not destruction, not demands. Just an open hand and an offer of friendship. It was more frightening than any weapon, and more wonderful than anything Ho had ever imagined. 1 week after Captain's speech to the High Council, the trial of Commander began. It was held in the same grand chamber with the same council members presiding, but the atmosphere was completely different. Stood in the center of the room, his 4 arms bound behind his back. He wore the gray uniform of a prisoner instead of the decorated robes of a commander. His silver skin was dull with exhaustion. He did not try to defend himself. He did not make excuses. When asked if he understood the charges against him, he simply nodded. "Commander," High Counselor Bora said, "you are charged with treason, mutiny, and attempted murder of a diplomatic guest. Each of these crimes carries the death penalty under law. Do you have anything to say before we pass judgment?" Raised his head. He looked not at Bora, but at the gallery where sat watching quietly. "I was wrong," he said. His voice was rough but steady. "I thought the humans were enemies. I thought they had come to destroy us. I attacked them because I was afraid." He paused, struggling to find the right words. "All my life I have been taught that strength means crushing your enemies. That power means making others fear you. But the humans showed me something different. They could have killed us all. They could have wiped out my entire fleet with a single command. Instead, they did nothing. They let us fire until we had nothing left. And then, they forgave us." His voice cracked. "I do not understand how that is possible. I do not understand how anyone could be that patient, that merciful. But I know that I was wrong to attack them. I accept whatever punishment the council decides." He bowed his head and waited. The chamber was silent. Everyone was looking at Bora, waiting for her judgment. But before she could speak, stood up from her seat in the gallery. "High Counselor, may I address the court?" Bora hesitated. This was unusual. Foreign guests were not supposed to speak during trials, but nothing about this situation was usual. "You may speak," Bora said. Walked down from the gallery and stood beside. The commander looked at her with confusion and something that might have been shame. "I did not come here to see this man punished," said. "I came here to ask for his freedom." A murmur ran through the chamber. Bora leaned forward. "You want us to release him after what he did?" "Yes." "Why? He tried to destroy your fleet. He tried to kill you." Turned to face the council. "When I was young," she said, "I served in the human military. I was assigned to a ship that patrolled the borders of our territory. One day we encountered a species that we had never met before. They attacked us without warning. They killed half of my crew." She paused, her eyes distant with memory. "I wanted revenge. I wanted to hunt them down and make them pay for every life they had taken. I was angry and hurt, and I thought that destruction was the only answer." "What did you do?" Bora asked. "My captain stopped me. She told me that revenge was easy, but it solved nothing. She said that the species who attacked us did so because they were afraid. They saw our ships and assumed we were enemies. Their fear made them do terrible things." Looked down at, she was right. When we finally made contact with that species, we discovered that they had been hunted by other civilizations for generations. They attacked everyone they met because they expected to be attacked first. Their violence was not cruelty. It was survival. What happened to them? We helped them. We protected them from their enemies. We taught them that not everyone wanted to hurt them. It took time, but eventually they became one of our closest allies. Today, they are one of the founding members of the Galactic Council. Turned back to face. "Commander, you attacked us because you were afraid. You were trying to protect your people. That is not evil. That is love expressed through the only language you knew." His eyes were wet. He tried to speak but could not find words. "I am asking the High Council to show mercy," continued. "Not because Commander deserves it, but because mercy is how change begins. If you punish him, you will create a martyr. Others who share his fears will say that the Council is controlled by aliens. They will resist and fight, and the violence will never end." She looked at Bora with steady eyes. "But if you show mercy, you will prove that a new way is possible. You will show your people that strength does not always mean destruction. You will give Commander the chance to become something better." The chamber was absolutely silent. Everyone was holding their breath. Bora stood up slowly. She walked down the steps until she was standing in front of. "Commander," she said, "you have been a loyal soldier for 30 years. You have fought for this empire. You have bled for this empire. And when you saw what you believed was a threat, you did what soldiers do. You attacked." She paused. "I cannot forget what you did, but I can choose how to respond." She reached out and unlocked the bindings on his wrists. They fell to the floor with a heavy clang. "You are free," she said. But your commission is revoked. You will never command a military vessel again. Instead, you will serve as an advisor to the Human Relations Council. You will spend the rest of your career building the very relationship you tried to destroy." Stared at her in disbelief. You are letting me go." "I am giving you a chance," Bora said. "Do not waste it." She turned to address the chamber. "Let the record show that Commander is pardoned by order of the High Council. This trial is concluded." The chamber erupted in noise. Some people were cheering, others were protesting. Officials were arguing among themselves, but above it all, something new was happening. Something was changing. Ho watched from the gallery, tears streaming down his face. He had spent his entire life studying the old stories. He knew every legend, every myth, every fragment of text about the humans, but nothing he had read had prepared him for this. The stories said that humans were powerful, that they were wise, that they were merciful. But they did not explain how it felt to watch that mercy in action. They did not describe the way it changed the air in the room, the way it seemed to make everything brighter and more hopeful. For the first time in his life, Ho understood why the ancient had revered the Earthborn. It was not because of their technology or their strength. It was because of their hearts. Outside the council building, crowds had gathered to hear the verdict. When the news spread that had been pardoned, there was confusion at first. Then, slowly, understanding began to dawn. The humans had asked for mercy for someone who had attacked them. They had argued for compassion instead of punishment. They had proven, beyond any doubt, that they were exactly what the old legends described. And the council had listened. By nightfall, celebrations had broken out across the capital. People danced in the streets. They sang old songs about the Earthborn, songs that had not been sung in public for centuries. They looked up at the sky where the human fleet waited, and for the first time, they felt hope instead of fear. In the gardens outside the council building, sat alone on a stone bench. She was tired. The past week had been the most important of her long career, and it had taken everything she had. Footsteps approached. She looked up to see Ho walking toward her. "May I join you?" he asked. "Please." He sat beside her, and for a while they watched the stars together in silence. "The council has agreed to your proposal," Ho said finally. "They are going to sign the treaty tomorrow, full diplomatic relations, cultural exchange, shared research, everything you asked for." Smiled, "That is good news." "It is more than good. It is a miracle. 3 days ago, half the council wanted to fight you. Now they are talking about building a monument to human friendship. People can change faster than you expect when they see a reason to." Ho nodded slowly. "I spent 40 years trying to prove that humans were real. Everyone said I was crazy. Everyone said the old stories were just myths. And now I understand that the stories were not just stories. They were memories, passed down through generations, changing and growing over time, but always keeping the truth at their center." He looked at with wonder in his eyes. "You really did come to our world thousands of years ago. You really did help our ancestors. You really did leave us the seeds of what we could become." "We planted seeds in many places," said. "Some grew, some did not. We have learned to be patient." "But why? Why do you care so much about species that are not your own?" Was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "Because we were alone once. When humanity first reached for the stars, we hoped to find others like us. We searched for centuries. We found worlds, resources, wonders beyond imagination. But we did not find friends. We were alone in a vast, cold universe." She looked up at the stars. That loneliness almost broke us. We began to believe that we were the only intelligent life that had ever existed, that the universe was a tomb and we were its only ghosts. What changed? We found them, other species, younger than us, still growing, still learning. They were not like us. They did not think like us or look like us or believe the same things, But they were alive. They were conscious. They looked at the stars and wondered what was out there. Smiled. When we found them, we finally understood our purpose. We were not alone. We had never been alone. We had just been the first to wake up. And now it was our responsibility to help the others wake up too. Ho sat in silence, processing her words. He thought about everything they had accomplished in 3,000 years. Their technology, their art, their philosophy, all of it, grown from seeds that humans had planted in the distant past. What happens now? He asked. Now we work together. We share what we know. We learn from each other. We build something new, something that neither of us could build alone. And the other species out there, the dangerous ones you warned us about. His expression became serious. They are real. Some of them are very dangerous. But together, humans and will be stronger. Together, we can face whatever comes. She stood up and offered Ho her hand. He took it and rose to stand beside her. Come, she said. There is a reception at the main hall, the first official human celebration in 3,000 years. We should not be late. They walked together through the gardens, toward the light and noise of the celebration. Behind them, the human fleet hung in the sky like a constellation of hope. The myths had become reality. The legends had proven true, and the universe, vast and ancient and full of mystery, had become a little less lonely. In the centuries to come, historians would look back on this week as the beginning of a new era. They would call it the Great Reunion, the moment when two species joined hands and stepped into the future together. But for now, it was simply a celebration, a gathering of friends, a promise of better things to come. And somewhere in the crowd, an old scholar named Ho raised a glass to the stars and whispered a thank you to everyone who had ever believed in stories. Because sometimes the stories were true all along.